Hare Krishna, welcome back to the live studios here in Radha Lane Mandir, ISKCON of Houston. We have a new guest couple, Lily and Carter, and I've been talking to them for the last almost hour, which went by in about 5 minutes. My, how time flies when you're having a good time, right? Welcome. And so here we are again. Welcome to all of you out there in cyberspace, wherever you are. And we're here to read the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Before we read, we always recite the prayer that was written and spoken by Srila Sanatana Goswami, the senior disciple of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared 500 years ago. I just explained this to them, so it'll be fresh in your minds. This prayer to the Srimad Bhagavatam, and we'll read it in Sanskrit and in English. Okay? Sarva Shastabdipa Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Prada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshaksharayate Sarvada Savasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. Who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. Madeka Bando Mad Sangin Mad Guru Mad Mahadana Mad Nishtadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhu tadayin atini chochata kara hanamun chagadachin mam premna rit kantayospura. O bestow, always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we've reached the 5th chapter of the 2nd canto, and what's happening here is Shukadeva Goswami is answering the questions of Maharaj Parikshit. And he asked about the process of creation, and now he's going to start describing the details of the process of creation. Text 14. The 5 elementary ingredients of creation, the interaction thereof, set up by eternal time, and the intuition or nature of the individual living beings are all differentiated parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. And in truth, there is no other value in them. Purport. This phenomenal world is impersonally the representation of Vasudeva, because the ingredients of its creation, their interaction, and the enjoyer of the resultant action, the living being, are all produced by the external and internal energies of Lord Krishna. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 7, 4, and 5. The ingredients, namely earth, water, fire, air, and sky, as well as the conception of material identity, intelligence, and the mind, are produced of the external energy of the Lord. The living entity who enjoys the interaction of the above gross and subtle ingredients as set up by eternal time is an offshoot of the internal potency, with freedom to remain either in the material or in the spiritual world. In the material world, the living entity is enticed by deluding nations, but in the spiritual world, he is in the normal condition of spiritual existence, without any delusion. The living entity is known as the marginal potency of the Lord. But in all circumstances, neither the material ingredients nor the spiritual parts and parcels are independent of the personality of Godhead. Vasudeva. For all things, whether products of the external, internal, or marginal potencies of the Lord, are simply displays of the same effulgence of the Lord, just as light, heat, and smoke are displays of fire. None of them is separate from the fire. All of them combine together to be called fire. Similarly, all phenomenal manifestations, as well as the effulgence of the body of Vasudeva, are his impersonal features, whereas he eternally exists in his transcendental form called Satchidananda Vigraha, distinct from all conceptions of the material ingredients mentioned above. Text 15. The Vedic literatures are made by and are meant for the Supreme Lord. The demigods are also meant for serving the Lord as parts of his body. The different planets are also meant for the sake of the Lord, and different sacrifices are performed just to please him. Purport. According to the Vedanta Sutras, Shastra Yonitvat, the Supreme Lord is the author of all revealed scriptures, and all revealed scriptures are for knowing the Supreme Lord. Veda means knowledge that leads to the Lord. The Vedas are made just to revive the forgotten consciousness of the conditioned souls. And any literature not meant for reviving God consciousness is rejected at once by the Narayana Para devotees. Such deluding books of knowledge, not having Narayana as their aim, are not at all knowledge, but are the playgrounds for crows who are interested in the rejected refuge of the world. Any book of knowledge, science or art, must lead to the knowledge of Narayana. Otherwise, it must be rejected. That is the way of advancement of knowledge. The supreme worshipable deity is Narayana. The demigods are recommended secondarily for worship in relation to Narayana, because the demigods are assisting hands in the management of the universal affairs. As the officers of a kingdom are respected due to their relation to the king, the demigods are worshipped due to their relation to the Lord. Without the Lord's relation, worship of the demigods is unauthorized, avidi purvakam, just as it is improper to water the leaves and branches of a tree without watering its root. Therefore, the demigods are also dependent on Narayana. The lokas, or different planets, are attractive because they have different varieties of life and bliss, partially representing the Satchidananda Vigraha. Everyone wants an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. In the material world, such an eternal life of bliss and knowledge is progressively realized in the upper planets, but after reaching there, one is inclined to achieve further progress along the path back to Godhead. Duration of life, with a proportionate quantity of bliss and knowledge, may be increased from one planet to another. One can increase the duration of life to thousands and hundreds of thousands of years in different planets, but nowhere is there eternal life. But one who can reach the highest planet, that of Brahma, can aspire to reach the planets in the spiritual sky, where life is eternal. Therefore, the progressive journey from one planet to another culminates in reaching the supreme planet of the Lord, Madhama, where life is eternal and full of bliss and knowledge. All different kinds of sacrifice are performed just to satisfy Lord Narayana with a view to reaching him. And the best sacrifice recommended in this age of Kali is the Sankirtana Yagya, the mainstay of the devotional service of a Narayana para devotee. So this Sankirtan Yagya means the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra that we do congregationally, and we also do individually on beads. Text 16. Oh, Narayana paro yogo, Narayana param tapaha, Narayana param jnanam, Narayana paragatihi. The verse before that was Narayana paraveda, Deva Narayanangajaha, Narayana para loka, Narayana para makaha. So that purport explains those ideas, that the Vedas is for knowing Narayan, and so forth. And now we find out that yoga is meant for attaining Narayana. All different types of meditation or mysticism are means for realizing Narayana. All austerities are aimed at achieving Narayana. Culture of transcendental knowledge is for getting a glimpse of Narayana. And ultimately, salvation is entering the kingdom of Narayana. Purport. In meditation, there are two systems of yoga, namely Ashtanga Yoga and Sankhya Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga in practice is concentrating the mind, releasing oneself from all engagements by the regulated processes of meditation, concentration, sitting postures, blocking the movements of the internal circulation of air, etc. Sankhya Yoga is meant to distinguish the truth from ephemerals. But ultimately, both systems are meant for realizing the impersonal Brahman, which is but a partial representation of Narayana, the personality of Godhead. As we have explained before, the impersonal Brahman effulgence is only a part of the personality of Godhead. Impersonal Brahman is situated on the person of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Impersonal Brahman, as such, Brahman is glorification of the personality of Godhead. This is confirmed both in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Matsya Purana. Gati refers to the ultimate destination, or the last word in liberation. Oneness with the impersonal Brahmajyoti is not ultimate liberation. Superior to that is the sublime association of the personality of Godhead in one of the innumerable spiritual planets in the Vaikuntha sky. Therefore, the conclusion is that Narayana, or the personality of Godhead, is the ultimate destination for all kinds of yoga systems, as well as all kinds of liberation. Text 17. Inspired by him only, I discovered what is already created by him, Narayana, under his supervision, as the all-pervading Supersoul, and I also am created by him only. Now remember, Narada is the son of Brahma, the first created being. And Narada asked him, Brahma, I notice that you're doing austerities, but you seem to be the person who's creating everything around here. What's going on? And these answers are answering that question. And now he's explaining that he's inspired by Narayana, who is an expansion of Krishna, God. So Brahma, although he appears to be the supreme personality in this universe, is actually not God. And he's admitting here that he's created by him. Purport. Even Brahma, the creator of the universe, admits that he is not the actual creator, but is simply inspired by Lord Narayana, and therefore creates under his superintendence those things already created by him. The supersoul of all living entities, two identities of the soul. Oh, I see. Two identities of soul, the supersoul and the individual soul, are admitted to be in the living entity, even by the greatest authority of the universe. The supersoul is the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, whereas the individual soul is the eternal servitor of the Lord. The Lord inspires the individual soul to create what is already created by the Lord. And by the goodwill of the Lord, a discoverer of something in the world is accredited as the discoverer. That's an interesting, I'll read that again. It's very nice. The Lord inspires the individual soul to create what is already created by the Lord. And by the goodwill of the Lord, a discoverer is something in the world is accredited as a discoverer. It is said that Columbus discovered the Western Hemisphere, but actually the tract of land was not created by Columbus. The vast tract of land was already there by the omnipotency of the Supreme Lord. And Columbus, by dint of his past service unto the Lord, was blessed with the credit of discovering America. Similarly, no one can create anything without the sanction of the Lord, since everyone sees according to his ability. This ability is also awarded by the Lord according to one's willingness to render service unto the Lord. One must therefore be voluntarily willing to render service unto the Lord, and thus the Lord will empower the doer in proportion to his surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Lord Brahma is a great devotee of the Lord. Therefore he has been empowered or inspired by the Lord to create such a universe as the one manifested before us. The Lord also inspired Arjuna to fight in the field of Kurukshetra as follows. Tasmat tvam utishta yashoda baswa jitva shatrun bhungshva rajam samridam mayai vaite nihata purvameva nimittamatram bhavyasavyasa chin. The battle of Kurukshetra, or any other battle at any place or at any time, is made by the will of the Lord. For no one can arrange such mass annihilation without the sanction of the Lord. The party of Duryodhana insulted Draupadi, a great devotee of Krishna, and she appealed to the Lord as well as to all the silent observers of this unwarranted insult. Arjuna was then advised by the Lord to fight and take credit. Otherwise the party of Duryodhana would be killed anyway by the will of the Lord. So Arjuna was advised just to become the agent and to take the credit for killing such great generals, or killing great generals like Bhishma and Karna. In the Vedic writings such as the Katha Upanishad, the Lord is described as the Sarva Bhuta Antaratma, or the personality of Godhead, who resides in everyone's body and who directs everything for one who is a soul surrendered unto him. Those who are not surrendered souls are put under the care of the material nature. Brahmanya sarvabhutani yantrarudani mayaya. Therefore they are allowed to do things on their own account and suffer the consequences themselves. Devotees like Brahma and Arjuna do not do anything on their own account, but as fully surrendered souls, they always await indications from the Lord. Therefore, they attempt to do something which appears very wonderful to ordinary vision. One of the Lord's names is Urukrama, or one whose actions are very wonderful and are beyond the imagination of the living being. So the actions of his devotees sometimes appear very wonderful due to the direction of the Lord. Beginning from Brahma, the topmost intelligent living being, entity within the universe, down to the smallest ant, every living entity's intelligence is overseen by the Lord in his transcendental position as the witness of all actions. The subtle presence of the Lord is felt by the intelligent man who can study the psychic effects of thinking, feeling, and willing. Getting the picture? Yeah. Text 18. This is called food for thought. Deep thought. You got to have some digestive power. The Supreme Lord is pure spiritual form, transcendental to all material qualities. Yet for the sake of the creation of the material world and its maintenance and annihilation, he accepts through his external energy the material modes of nature called goodness, passion, and ignorance. Purport. The Supreme Lord is the master of the external energy manifested by three material modes, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. And as master of this energy, he is ever unaffected by the influence of such bewildering energy. The living entities, the jivas, however, are affected by or susceptible to being influenced by such modes of material nature. That is the difference between the Lord and the living entities. The living entities are subject to those qualities, although originally the living entities are qualitatively one with the Lord. In other words, the material modes of nature, being products of the energy of the Lord, are certainly connected with the Lord. But the connection is just like that between the master and the servants. The Supreme Lord is the controller of the material energy, whereas the living entities who are entangled in the material world are neither masters nor controllers. Rather, they become subordinate to or controlled by such energy. Factually, the Lord is eternally manifested by his internal potency or spiritual energy, just like the sun and its rays in the clear sky. But at times, he creates the material energy as the sun creates a cloud in the clear sky. As the sun is ever increasingly unaffected by a spot of cloud, so also the unlimited Lord is unaffected by the spot of material energy manifested at times in the unlimited span of the Lord's rays of Brahma Jyoti. Text 19. These three modes of material nature, being further manifested as matter, knowledge, and activities, put the eternally transcendental living entity under conditions of cause and effect and make him responsible for such activities. Purport. Because they are between the internal and external potencies, the eternally transcendental living entities are called the marginal potency of the Lord. Factually, the living entities are not meant to be so conditioned by the material energy, but due to their being affected by the false sense of lording it over the material energy, they come under the influence of such potency, and thus, become conditioned by the three modes of material nature. This external energy of the Lord covers up the pure knowledge of the living entities, eternally existing with Him. But the covering is so constant that it appears that the conditioned souls are eternally ignorant. Such is the wonderful action of Maya, or the external energy, manifested as if materially produced. By the covering power of the material energy, the material scientist cannot look beyond the material causes. But factually, behind the material manifestations, there are adibhuta, adhyatma, and adidaiva actions, which the conditioned soul, in the mode of ignorance, cannot see. The adibhuta manifestation entails repetitions of births and deaths, with old age and diseases. The adhyatma manifestation conditions the spirit soul, and the adidaiva manifestation is the controlling system. These are the material manifestations of cause and effect, and the sense of responsibility of the conditioned actors. They are, after all, manifestations of the conditioned state, and the human being's freedom from such a conditioned state is the highest perfectional attainment. Text 20. Let me point out that we've only heard 6 verses.
You said it, how many?
18,000.
Oh, wow.
So just to open up your minds, how much you actually can learn about God. And most religious teachers in this world today, they're saying, no, you can only know this much. Yeah. Or no, you can only know this much. No, you can only know this much. Only the Srimad-Bhagavatam gives you unlimited access.
That's 6 already? Only 6.
Yeah, we've done 6 verses.
Learned so much already through that.
Exactly. Yeah. Stick around. We're going to read all 18,000 right here. And it's live streamed. Even when I'm not here, it's live streamed. Every day. Yeah.
It's truly our infinite.
And you can, if you're on Facebook, you can search for daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, and you can watch this going on every day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'd rather come see you in person now.
Either way. Either way. Okay, text 20. O Brahmana Narada, the superseer, the transcendent Lord, is beyond the perception of the material senses of living entities because of the above-mentioned 3 modes of nature. But he is the controller of everyone, including me. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 7:24-25, the Lord has declared very clearly that the impersonalist, who gives more importance to the transcendental rays of the Lord as Brahma Jyoti, and who concludes that the absolute truth is ultimately impersonal and only manifests a form at a time of necessity, is less intelligent than the personalist, however much the impersonalist may be engaged in studying the Vedanta. The fact is that such impersonalists are covered by the above-mentioned 3 modes of material nature. Therefore, they are unable to approach the transcendental personality of Lord. The Lord is not approachable by everyone because he is curtained by his Yogamaya potency. But one should not wrongly conclude that the Lord was formerly unmanifested and has now manifested himself in the human form. This misconception of the formlessness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is due to the Yogamaya curtain of the conditioned soul. I'll read that again. This misconception of the formlessness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is due to the Yogamaya curtain of the Lord and can be removed only by the Supreme Will as soon as the conditioned soul surrenders unto Him. The devotees of the Lord, who are transcendental to the above-mentioned three modes of material nature, can see the all-blissful transcendental form of the Lord with their vision of love and the attitude of pure devotional service. Text 21. By His own potency, the Lord, who is the controller of all energies, thus creates eternal time, the fate of all living entities, and the particular natures the living entities have accepted for being created again, before they had independently merged into Him. Purport. The creation of the material world, wherein the conditioned souls are allowed to act subordinately to the Supreme Lord, takes place again and again after being repeatedly annihilated. The material creation is something like a cloud in the unlimited sky. The real sky is the spiritual sky, eternally filled with the rays of the Brahmajyoti, and a portion of this unlimited sky is covered by the Mahatattva cloud of the material creation, in which the conditioned souls who want to lord it over the material nature against the will of the Lord are put into play as they desire under the control of the Lord by the agency of His external energy. As the rainy season appears and disappears regularly, the creation takes place and is again annihilated under the control of the Lord, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 8:19. So the creation and annihilation of the material worlds is a regular action of the Lord, just to allow the conditioned souls to play as they like, and thereby create their own fate of being differently created again in terms of their independent desires at the time of annihilation. The creation therefore takes place at a historical date, as we are accustomed to think of everything which has a beginning in our tiny experience. The process of creation and annihilation is called anadi, or without reference to date regarding the time the creation first took place, because the duration of even a partial creation is 8,640,000,000 years. The law of creation is, however, as mentioned in the Vedic literatures, that it is created at certain intervals and is again annihilated by the will of the Lord. So it's interesting, we were talking to Lily and Carter, thank you. This is actually one day of Brahma. 8,600,000,000, 24 hours of Brahma. So what that means is, here it says, partial in creation is 8 billion. That means at the night of Brahma, the universe is partially devastated and then recreated by Brahma when he wakes up the next day. So you think you have big duties to do when you wake up in the morning? You got to brush your teeth, you got to remember to do this and to do that. So when Brahma wakes up every morning, he's got to recreate a good part of the universe. Yeah. So we should think again before we want to take the birth of Brahma. The whole material or even the spiritual creation is the manifestation of the energy of the Lord, just as the light and heat of a fire are different manifestations of the fire's energy. The Lord therefore exists in His impersonal form by such expansion of energy, and the complete creation rests on His impersonal feature. Nonetheless, He keeps Himself distinct from such creation as the Purnam, or complete. And so, no one should wrongly think, due to the Lord's unlimited personal expansions, that His personal feature is not existent. The impersonal expansions are a manifestation of His energy, and He is always in His personal feature, despite His innumerable unlimited expansions and impersonal energies. For human intelligence, it is very difficult to conceive how the whole creation rests on his expansion of energy. But the Lord has given a very good example in the Bhagavad Gita. It is said that although the air and the atoms rest within the huge expansion of the sky, which is like the resting reservoir of everything materially created, still the sky remains separate and unaffected. Similarly, although the Supreme Lord maintains everything created by his expansion of energy, he always remains separate. This is accepted even by Shankaracharya, the great advocate of the impersonal form of the Absolute. He says, Narayana pado vyaktat, or Narayana exists separately, apart from the impersonal creative energy. The whole creation thus merges within the body of transcendental Narayana at the time of annihilation, and the creation emanates from his body again with the same unchanging categories of fate and individual nature. The individual living entities, being parts and parcels of the Lord, are sometimes described as Atma, because they are qualitatively one with him in spiritual constitution. But because such living entities are apt to be attracted to the material creation, actively and subjectively, they are therefore different from the Lord. Text 22. After the incarnation of the first Purusha, Karanarvashai Vishnu, the Mahatattva, or the principle of material creation, is generated, and then time is manifested, and in course of time, the three qualities appear. Nature means the three qualitative appearances. They transform into activities. Purport. By the omnipotency of the Supreme Lord, the whole material creation evolves by the process of transformation and reactions one after another. And by the same omnipotency, they are wound up again, one after another, and conserved in the body of the Supreme. Kala, or time, is synonymous with nature and is the transformed manifestation of the principle of material creation. As such, Kala may be taken as the first cause of the creation, and by transformation of nature, different activities in the material world become visible. These activities may be taken up as the natural instinct of each and every living being, or even of the inert objects. And after the manifestation of activities, there are varieties of products and byproducts of the same nature. Originally, these are all due to the Supreme Lord. The Vedanta Sutras and the Bhagavatam thus begin with the Absolute Truth as the beginning of all creations, Jadmad Yasya Yataha. That's the first verse of the Bhagavatam. It's also the first verse of the Vedanta Sutra. And therefore the Bhagavatam is considered to be a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. Text 23. Material activities are caused by the Mahatattvas being agitated. At first, there is the transformation of the modes of goodness and passion. And later, due to the mode of ignorance, matter, material knowledge, and the different activities of material knowledge come into play. Purport. Material creations of every description are more or less due to the development of the mode of passion, rajas. The Mahatattva is the principle of material creation, and when it is agitated by the will of the Supreme, at first the modes of passion and ignorance are prominent, and afterwards the mode of passion becomes prominent. Wait, let me do that again. Let me say that again. This is very, very intricate and it needs to be understood properly. The Mahatattva is the principle of material creation, and when it is agitated by the will of the Supreme, at first the modes of passion and goodness are prominent. See you, Nitya. Hare Krishna. Haribo. Again, the Mahatattva is the principle of material creation, and when it is agitated by the will of the Supreme, at first the modes of passion and goodness are prominent, and afterwards the mode of passion being generated in due course by material activities of different varieties becomes prominent, and the living entities are thus involved more and more in ignorance. Brahma is the representation of the mode of passion, and Vishnu is the representation of the mode of goodness, while the mode of ignorance is represented by Lord Shiva, the father of material activities. Material nature is called the mother, and the initiator for materialistic life is the father, Lord Shiva. All material creation by the living entities is therefore initiated by the mode of passion. With the advancement of a particular millennium, the different modes act by gradual development. In the age of Kali, when the mode of passion is most prominent, material activities of different varieties in the name of advancement of human civilization take place, and the living entities become more and more involved in forgetting their real identity. Yes, the spiritual nature. By a slight cultivation of the mode of goodness, a glimpse of the spiritual nature is perceived. But due to the prominence of the mode of passion, the mode of goodness becomes adulterated. Therefore, one cannot transcend the limits of the material modes, and therefore realization of the Lord, which is always transcendental, who is always transcendental to the modes of material nature, becomes very difficult for the living entities, even though prominently situated in the mode of goodness through cultivation of the various methods. The gross material elements are adibhutam. Their maintenance is adidaivatam, and the initiator of material activities is called adhyatmam. In the material world, these three principles act as prominent features, namely as raw material, its regular supplier, and its use in different varieties of material creations for sense enjoyment by the bewildered entities. And we will stop the reading there for tonight. And now we have reflection, which means that if there's anything that stuck out in your mind from the reading, or anything you want to be discussed further, please. Please, please.
The Lord inspires the personal and individual soul to create what is already created by the Lord.
Yes.
And by the goodwill of the Lord, the discovery of something.
Fantastic question.
Accredited to.
Thank you.
Discovery.
Thank you.
Somebody, or maybe a collective of people, once told me that you've never had an original thought.
Yeah. You can't think anything unless it's already been thought by the Lord. You can't see anything unless it's already been seen by the Lord. And therefore you're completely dependent on the Lord. But in this context, this is describing the creation of the universe. So the first creation, and that's why it's talking about Brahma creating something that's already created by the Lord. There's two divisions of creation. The first is called Sarga, and that's the creation of Mahavishnu, who is a direct expansion of Krishna, an expansion of Krishna, but Krishna. And the Visarga, which is the creation by Brahma, who actually takes the Sarga, or the subtle creation of all the elements, the plan. It's like a blueprint. Something's planned in the mind, and then you carry it out in the world. First, it's created in here, and then it comes out in the world. So the Lord, when He's dreaming, He creates the whole thing in His dream. And then that creation comes out of His body, and in each universe of an expansion of His, from His navel, there grows a lotus stem and then a lotus flower. And that lotus flower contains all the energies that are needed to create externally, to manifest the material universe. And through that stem, all the planetary systems and all the codes of nature that are causing things to be formed the way they are, they all come into through the body of Brahma, they all come out. And then he engineers the creation of the universe. All the different environments, all the different living entities, and their placements according to where they were in the previous creation. That's called the Visarga. So it's the creation of what's already been created by the Lord.
So in that sense, everything that is to be created has already been created.
Exactly.
Infinite.
And each time the universe is created, it's created in the same mold, same model. There's one Brahma in each universe. There's 7 great sages. There's different planetary systems in different parts of the universe. And it's all created very systematically in a very organized way. And therefore, wherever you look, you'll find organization. And when people try to tell you that there was nothing, it was created out of nothing, or it created out of a big bang, or out of chance, or whatever, these people are in the deepest, darkest ignorance, and you should go away from that person and that thought as fast as you can, and as far as you can. And you will come to the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. Yes, Hannah.
Why is the Brahma of this universe the youngest?
Because in the process of creation, it just happens to be the last one that's created. When Brahma breathes out and all these universes come out, this one that we're in is the last one to be created. Therefore, he's the youngest.
Does that have anything to do with it being the age of Kali?
No.
No.
Age of Kali is 1/4, or well, not 1/4, but one of that cycle I talked to you about before. Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. 1,000 of those make up one day of Brahma.
I think I had just gotten breath a day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in all at one go. That's why the Bhagavatam explains everything in such detail, and Prabhupada's purports, I mean, they're out of this world. How he puts things, you're not so familiar with it yet, but if you do read these books all the way through, you'll be amazed, because Prabhupada can explain the same thing in a different way, in different places, and if you keep hearing and keep at least theoretically accepting, you may not be able to accept everything immediately, but if you theoretically accept, what if this were true? Let me hear it with that mentality. That's called faith. Not blind faith. We don't demand blind faith. Most sectarian religious preachers demand blind faith. There's not so much philosophy behind it. It's the emotion, it's the sentiment.
I had a question about one part, the last thing that you read. Therefore, one cannot transcend the limits of the material modes, and therefore realization of the Lord, who is always transcendental to the modes of material nature, becomes very difficult for the living entities, even though prominently situated in the mode of goodness through cultivation of the various methods. I don't know, I think I can kind of relate a bit to the difficultness in that.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know, that was just the part that kind of like,
Stuck out.
yeah, stuck out from the,
Because we're so tiny,
yeah,
and what we're hearing is so great and vast and profound, that it's actually impossible for us to figure it out by looking around and researching and figuring it out. It's not possible, because we're infinitesimal and the Lord is infinite. But if you're fortunate enough to meet a person who has met a person who has met a person who has explained this, Lord Brahma is our founder acharya, or the founder acharya of our sampradaya is Lord Brahma, and he was there. Once he did his austerities, before he started to create the universe, Krishna came to him, shook his hand, well done. So he saw Krishna face to face, and then Krishna showed him the spiritual world, literally. So the things that he says about all these things, the process of creation, the spiritual world, how it's all working, what our duties are, why we're here, how we got here, where we came from, etc., etc. All those things he saw for himself. So he explained it to Brahma, and he's explaining it right now in this section of the Bhagavatam. Yeah. He's explaining it to Narada Muni, who's his son, mind-born son. And then Narada explains it to Vyasadeva, like that. Vyasadeva explains it to Madhvacharya. And then there's a lot of other persons, and then Madhavinda Puri, and then Ishwara Puri, and then Lord Chaitanya comes and brings it all together. And then there's a whole, I'm in the 12th generation from Lord Chaitanya. So I mentioned this in that class I gave in the last initiation. Try to understand how fortunate we are. We've appeared on the earth just 500 years after Lord Chaitanya. And he appears once every 8,640,000,000 years. So what's the percentage? Actually, Rasi Kendra figured it out with a slide with a scientific calculator. It's 1/6 of 1/10,000th of a percent. That's the chance of us taking birth on the earth just 12 generations after Lord Chaitanya. That's how fortunate we are. So, the point I'm making is this, that as difficult as it is to understand, if you're sincere and honest, and you hear from Lord Chaitanya or one of his representatives who's not changing it, then you can understand it immediately just by hearing. It takes a little time to hear the whole thing all the way through. But if you have the spiritual wherewithal to do that, then you can get the full understanding, well, as full as we can. We're infinitesimal, we can't understand everything about Krishna, that wouldn't be possible, but we can understand as much as we need to want to go back to Godhead, to be inspired to do the needful to go back to Godhead, and we can go back to Godhead in this life. That's the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. He came to give love of Godhead to anyone and everyone without consideration of qualification. The only qualification is an intense desire to know.
This may be on a separate topic, but the entire time I've been wondering about this painting behind you.
Oh, very intelligent. This is Sukadeva Goswami, the one that's standing there naked. And he's arrived at this place, which is on the bank of the Ganges. You can just see this little sliver of light over here. That's the bank of the Ganges. That's the Ganges River. And this is Maharaj Parikshit, who was the emperor of the earth and it got cursed by a little Brahmin boy to die in 7 days. And he decided on his own not to. Oh, this is also part of the Ganges. Yeah, it's water also. And he decided to fast to death in the Ganges and wait for the curse to manifest. And all these sages and souls from all over the universe came to be with him. And Shukadeva Goswami shows up just at the right moment, and all of them bow down to him, even though he's just a 16-year-old boy running around naked, acting like he's just a madman, but he actually knew everything. So he sat down, they gave him the seat of honor, and he spoke the Bhagavatam as we are hearing it, verse by verse. That was 5,000 years ago. And it was this is just at the beginning of the Kali Yuga. The Kali Yuga begins when Krishna leaves. Krishna comes at the end of the Dwapara Yuga, and when he leaves, then the Kali Yuga begins. And it gradually degrades. Then when Lord Chaitanya comes, for 10,000 years, there's a streak of gold, a streak of knowledge, a streak of hope, and it gradually increases for 5,000 years until its influence is at its peak, and then it gradually decreases for another 5,000 years, and then the Kali Yuga fully takes hold. And you don't want to be here when that happens. Because if you think it's bad now, therefore, the message is, get serious, go back to Godhead in this life. That's why you're here. That's where we're all here. There's a lot to process. It's very profound.
I'm very, very lucky today that we just chose today to come down here.
Well, we're really happy that you're happy and feeling lucky.
Probably the happiest I've been in a long time.
Oh, good. That's just the beginning, because you can actually feel happier and happier and happier forever.
Yeah.
If you want to.
Yeah.
If that's what you want. You came to the right place. But we'll be tested, and we're still in the material world, and around us there will be chaos, but we can become transcendental to that chaos. It's possible in this life by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. And the first thing to do is to chant Hare Krishna. That's right, you got it. And then learn the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and chant it. No hard and fast rules. Sing, think, speak, yell, whatever, alone, in public, whatever. Don't stop. And there's a process, and we can teach you the process if you want.
What's the process?
Well, there's a process of being connected to the sound that's being passed down from Brahma, the beginning of the creation, to us. And that process is called Diksha, or initiation. And then we make vows. First of all, we have to be tested to see if we're actually sincere. And then we take a vow to follow certain principles. We chant a certain number of names, a certain number of mantras, the Hare Krishna mantra, every day without fail. And we follow regulated principles which purify our hearts and help us to taste the name and clean the heart, until we can actually understand and eventually see Krishna. So the initiation is to follow the 4 regulator principles strictly for the rest of your life. And the regulator principles are no meat eating, fish or eggs, no gambling, no intoxication, and no illicit sex. And then chant 16 rounds of the Maha Mantra. 16 rounds mean there's a set of beads, and there's 108 beads, and on each bead you chant one mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Then you go to the next bead. 108 beads, 16 times. Takes about 2 hours once you get the hang of it. And with that consciousness you get from doing that, then you hear and keep on hearing. And gradually we wake up. And as we wake up, our vision becomes clearer. Just like when you wake up in the morning, at first it's like, huh? And then gradually you wake up, and then things become clear, what you have to do and what your duties are and everything. So as you wake up spiritually, it becomes more and more clear. And finally, at the time of death, when you leave your body, you'll want to go back to Godhead. You won't be holding on, saying, no, I'm not ready, no. You want to go. And you'll chant Hare Krishna, and you're transferred immediately, instantaneously, back to the spiritual world. You wake up from the dream, and you realize that you were in the spiritual world all along, but you just forgotten.
And now as for the forgetting that happens, and I think just about anybody's lifetime is, of course, like meditating. Is it to more like achieve memories from past lifetimes or from your spiritual self, or what is the whole forgetting aspect in being here, this lifetime, this vessel?
What is the purpose of it?
I guess.
What's the question?
Like you said, as we have forgotten that we are in the spirit realm, being down here in these bodies is more of an ego than we are as yourself. And
Yes.
I guess stepping back into that divine all-being, you realize that you've forgotten that while here.
Well, we don't remember previous lifetimes, because if we did, we wouldn't be able to function. If we could remember all the things we did, we wouldn't be able to function. We'd be too confused. So Krishna's very kindly arranged for us to forget our previous lifetimes so that we can concentrate on the lifetime that we are now. But when we actually take to the process and we become purified of matter from matter's influence, then we are transferred immediately back to the spiritual world. There's no question of having to remember the material world or having to remember our previous births. We don't have to remember our previous births to go back to Godhead. That's not spiritual. That's just remembering more material activities and more material experiences.
That definitely.
People think that that's spiritual. If I can remember a last lifetime, or if I can talk to somebody that's already died, or something like that, they think that's spiritual. That's not spiritual. That's just another subtle aspect of the material existence. But when you go back to Godhead, you forget this material world and you never want to come back again. And you don't. Only if you're sent by Krishna on a mission, that's possible. But then it's on a whole other platform and you never forget. Our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, never forgot. He came from the spiritual world. And he remembers clearly things that were happening to him when he was 3 months old. And there were many witnesses who saw him as a baby inside the baby buggy, perambulator they call it in India at that time. And he was standing up and watching deity, like these deities, and he would watch the deities for hours at a time when he was still in a baby buggy. So he never forgot Krishna. He was born in a family of pure devotees, and even from his childhood he would perform all the festivals and organize his village, his neighborhood friends in spiritual festivals. And he was like that his whole life. And then at one point he came to America, and the rest is history. Yeah, well, that's what it takes. For a person to spread actual God consciousness all over the world, you have to be empowered by God. You can't do that on your own. Okay? We'll see you another day.
Absolutely.
I hope so. All right. Thank you everyone for coming to the daily reading of Srila Prabhupada's books, going through the Srimad-Bhagavatam little by little, and getting realizations and happiness and having real life. This is real social life. Hearing Krishna together, talking about Krishna together. It brings us together on a platform that nothing else can. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.